You are now listening to FireWall Chats with the IT-ISAC. Today's guest is Jon Brandt, Director of Professional Practices and Innovation at ISACA. He serves ISACA departments as a SME expert on information security, and he spearheads innovative workforce readiness solutions and related performance assessments. Jon is a U.S. Navy veteran with nearly 30 years of experience, spanning multidisciplinary security, cyber operations, and technical workforce development. Today, Jon and IT-ISAC Executive Director Scott Algeier discuss the current environment for those looking to land a job in cybersecurity, the need to reevaluate U.S. educational strategy for the cyber industry, the type of jobs available in the field, and the work ISACA is doing to help individuals retain new skills and to help businesses to have well-trained employees.
Hello, and thank you for joining FireWall Chats. My name is Scott Algeier. I'm the Executive Director of the IT-ISAC, and it's my honor to have Jon Brandt with us today from ISACA. So Jonathan, good morning. How are you doing today?
Scott, thanks for having me. Super excited to join you today.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. So first, to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about ISACA?
All right, sure thing. So Jon Brandt, I'm a 20-year Navy veteran. I joined ISACA back in mid-2014. Been involved on all aspects of thought leadership and professional development. My current title is Director of Professional Practices and Innovation. I have purview for professional development within the IT, emerging tech, information security, privacy, and risk domains, as well as performance-based testing and skills-based lab development.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So tell us a little bit about ISACA itself and its interest in workforce development. You recently did a blog for us on the topic, which we'll get into that blog. I have a couple of questions about that blog for you in a minute here. But can you talk a little bit generally about ISACA and his work in workforce development?
Sure thing. So ISACA is a global membership-based association. Got its roots anchored in IT audit a long time ago, more than 50 years ago, continue to evolve. So we have a strong membership in IT audit governance, risk, as well as information security. That portfolio, in which was expanded into cybersecurity about the time that I got hired. Our work, first and foremost, and most people know ISACA as being a credentialing body, like a lot of our competitors out there. But credentials is just one aspect of what we do. Is we're truly we exist to meet our members where they need us, from the time they enter a particular career field to the time they retire. So between conferences, journal articles, blogs, we have our certifications, we've got training courses and whatnot, really truly a well-rounded group. We also have a nonprofit that was stood up not too long ago to really focus on some of the opportunities that are out there within the workforce. So again, global footprint, we have a ton of passionate members across the globe. I'm truly honored in this position to kind of help move that forward and to empower them to make a difference.
Yeah, so that's a great summary. Thank you. So ISACA is a very well-known organization, and the IT-ISAC, we're happy to be partners with ISACA, engaged in a partnership a couple of years ago. It's really been productive for us. So I want to thank you and the ISACA team for all of your work, both in this space and your partnership with the IT-ISAC. So with that, let's talk about your blog for a little bit. So you were kind enough to write a blog for us about workforce issues and cybersecurity, and really almost for as long as I've been involved in the industry and in cybersecurity, I've heard how colleges and universities are not producing graduates with cybersecurity skills. And back in the day, that was probably, or earlier in my career, that was understandable because cybersecurity really wasn't a field, right? But now that it is a field, but you note in your blog how difficult it is for these recent graduates with cybersecurity degrees to land jobs. So in the beginning, we weren't producing people with the skill sets. Now we're producing people with skill sets who can't land jobs. So why is this, right? Do these graduates not have the right skill sets, or is there a disconnect in the HR and hiring process? So now that we're producing people with cybersecurity degrees, why is it so difficult for them to get that first job?
So first and foremost, it's a complicated issue. First, you can't overlook the HR component, right? Human capital, how we describe work, how we apply positions and whatnot is a major challenge right now. Comb LinkedIn, I've referenced it in a blog. I talk about it a lot. We simply do not have enough entry-level positions for what we're created, and that's an opportunity for the global world to start with. I always like to kind of take a step back here. Right after I got hired at ISACA, we had changed the format of our conference to really cater towards this the new position, right, that within cyber and everything. And I will never forget a keynote speaker who asked a question: how many of you, by a show of hands, have a corporate training program? And no lie, Scott, about 6 hands went up. And it was the most demoralizing thing for me, because within the military, like, we are really good at training people just in time with nothing more than an aptitude to do some of the most highly technical things across the planet in median time 12 to 18 months, right? And the market has just to this point where you expect that, okay, if we specify something, we're going to purchase, something, in this case, talent, and then we don't need to make any other investment. And that's just highly inappropriate for where we're at right now. Things are moving way too fast. So you have to we have to have some bench depth of sorts, right? If you look at all the jobs that are out there, everybody has experience requirement. Well, how do you create experience for somebody who just went through a learning journey in a university? Performance assessments can help bridge that mark. But you have to change our thinking. And really, at the end of the day, I think that's what it is you need a lot of people to challenge a lot of norms and everything of what we're looking for and how we can employ people. So that's the first part of it. Secondly, is if they have the skills or not. According to our most recent State of Cybersecurity research report, which was just released a couple weeks ago, no, there's a gap. First and foremost, we know that soft skills is an opportunity across both the current workforce as well as university graduates. And for your listeners, we need to think a little bit broader. It's not just speaking skills. It's not just writing. Soft skills is everything from analytical reasoning, critical thinking. We dove into it about questions about empathy and honesty, and those are truly opportunities for us. So those two major things, they're current issues today, but they speak to a bigger issue about education, right? And I know both yourself and here at ISACA, we've got a purview that's greater than just the United States. However, and I do preface this when I talk to people, is at least here within the United States, how we do things is going to differ from parts of Europe, from parts of Asia or whatnot. I think the perfect model is a blend of everything of how we fix this.
Yeah, so there's really a lot to unpack there, John.
There is.
So, it's a HR issue, it's an education issue, it's a ensuring once you hire people that they get the right training and skill sets there, right? I think you call the soft skills, right? So let's start with competency-based education, right? And talk about the education system a little bit more. And then we could talk about soft skills in a bit. So competency-based education, you mentioned in the blog that we need to reevaluate the U.S. educational strategy and consider this concept of competency-based education. So what is that? How are we doing in building a competency-based education?
So we have a lot of work to do. And I think one of the things that compounds this is that, at least here within the United States, our educational strategy is very fragmented. A few years ago, when I pursued a master's, this really just kind of hit me. It just was staring me in the face that the K-12 as well as the universities are they're just not very aligned. And there's a problem there. And I'm not trying to paint a very broad brush, because there are glimmers of hope across the country. However, when you look at the fact that we have colleges out there that are creating basically remedial type courses for programs in any number of subjects, which are not credit earning, but become basically to allow you to move into a pathway, that to me highlights more than anything else that what we're getting out of K-12 is not really serving where we need to be. All right. And they don't work closely together. And there's different challenges. And again, it is a very complex problem. We treat cyber very specifically. Education is under a different purview within the US government. How money flows into us and all that makes it a hard problem. I would say that if anybody wants to look at how you can make this work, look at North Dakota K-20W initiative, and which is a public-private partnership that really was an opportunity for the private sector to help the state of North Dakota. They ended up looking at, and it was to help raise the skills of both educators and students alike. It provided resources. Then it ended up translating into we translate into legislative academic standards. And then when you have those, then educational pipelines can adjust, and you could prepare, tomorrow's educators to fulfill those needs. So that there is really the greatest thing. But competency-based education in its simplest form is focused on the individual. And there are some actual finite definitions with it. I think they're not really, we don't need to spend any time on that, but it's based on the learner and flexibility. And if we look at in two different lenses, K-12, our model largely does not support that. There are, again, at your middle school to high school, we do see some good things that are happening where you'll allow students to take advanced classes, but that's still not individualized pacing of a student, right? All you're doing is putting them in a different track. That's okay. In a university college setting, where this manifests is that, from what I saw, you only have about 15 colleges is what the most recent report that I saw that's doing competency-based learning. The most notable for our industry is Western Governors, where it's not time-based. And I think more than anything, that's where we need to be and where the benefit is. And it's this, how you balance meeting objectives and the necessary maturity. And in the military, I saw this first and foremost, like post 9/11, they changed kind of at what level you can recruit into, how fast you can accelerate promotions for people. And it was good for people at the time. If you get the maturity is there for the individual, then it's win-win. But when you accelerate some people and the maturity may not be there, we could actually be setting them up for success, which really makes this a psychological issue as much as a technical issue for us that we need to look at.
The concept of the K-12 schools preparing the future workforce is really an interesting one, because you look at the number of jobs that exist today that didn't exist 20 years ago, right? So you're training at the K-12 level, you're trying to train the kids for jobs, or give them education at least for jobs that don't yet exist. Like, there was no cybersecurity consultant, right? 25 years ago, at least, however many years ago, when I went through our K through 12 schools, there really wasn't any cybersecurity at all, right? So, but then there's the basics, the critical thinking. You call some of these the soft skills, right? There's communication, critical thinking, problem solving. Are these still relevant skills for the modern workforce, or is it all technology driven?
No, I would argue that soft skills, and specifically critical thinking, analytical reasoning, look at resilience, individual resilience, those things are arguably more important right now and beyond our respective greater IT workforce. Every career field that's out there is being impacted by the rate of change with technological advancements. And, something you just touched on, right, is there is a philosophical difference in barrier right now, largely within K-12, because they do not want to, quote unquote, prepare people for jobs. We have had this focus on a global relevance, and we do have a global economy, right? So there's a lot of value in experience in exposure to different geographic regions and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, where we're largely falling down is, look at how the academic, where it went to many years ago is it became assessment based. And because it's easy, right? You want to say it becomes binary, yes or no, A, B, or C letter grade. Well, an A summative grade is different in my mind than a level effort. And we have to get to this point of meeting learners at all levels. And I say learner because we're going to have people entering the workforce a lot older than this 18 or 19 or even 22-year-olds, because the shift right now is there's been an evolution of lifelong learning into lifelong employability. And it's increasingly incumbent upon the individual, and this is a novel idea, right? Because you have to have enough wherewithal to be monitoring your situation and what's happening with your job, what's going on with your occupation. And that's very different mindset than we've had over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, so there definitely is an evolution, that I'm seeing as well. But there's still a perception that when it comes to cybersecurity, you need to be technical and that you need to be good in math, right? STEM programs are designed in part for getting children interested in these topics. So, but then, you have people like me, who I was a history major, a master's degree in international relations, and yet I found myself, being in cybersecurity. So is cybersecurity a technical field, or is there room for people without technical competencies?
Cybersecurity is very broad. There are technical and non-technical positions within it. And that's one of the things I think above all else that we really need to do a better job describing the work. When we talk about some of the HR challenges that are out there, is like we continually are looking for, trying to hire the unicorns that, with tons of years of experience, they've touched every kind of technology, and that's just not appropriate. Now, I'm very sensitive to your smaller to medium businesses that have smaller teams. They need to be leaner. You're doing more with less. But at the end of the day, it's becoming, from my perspective, we're becoming a little short-sighted, because those that are very good with analytical problems, there's a lot of success stories, to your point, like people like yourself that are coming from unrelated career fields, and things like law enforcement, psychology, and liberal arts. Like it ultimately boils down to how the individual looks at problems. And there is, obviously, I think that there's just would be some resistance on this, but there's a reason why within the military they created a cyber aptitude assessment, and those types of things they're not 100% solutions, but they're pretty good predictors of success within career fields. And that's just something I think increasingly that's going to become, could be a valuable resource for us at large.
Yeah, awesome. In the blog post, you just to kind of highlight this point a little bit more, you talk about the 4 buckets in cybersecurity, right? There's the analyst, there's the architect, there's the engineer, and then there's support. I mean, each of those require different skill sets, right? So, but once you get into cybersecurity too, some people want to stay and they want to be in the space that they're in. They want to be an analyst or they want to stay in the architecture, but others may want to take on more leadership positions, right? They want to become a CISO or a CSO or a manager. So how are we doing in training some of these technical people to get the business acumen and the business skill sets to advance their careers in business as opposed to just maintaining a technical or operational path?
Yeah, we're really not, Scott. Listen, we're going to call a spade here. Cybersecurity is very much a business problem, right? And the people that are succeeding and can make it at the at management levels or executive leadership positions are the ones who can actually understand business challenges. So we're largely failing there, and this is where I think a lot of the heartburn is coming with why soft skills just continues to rise to the top of the largest gap that we have right now. We have treated it as a technical problem, and it's not. And in some cases it is, but increasingly, what we're hearing from folks is they would much rather take somebody, bring them into the role, into the security function in some capacity, if they understand the organizational mission, climate, culture, what their mission and vision is, what their values are, and can learn certain technical aspects of it. This ties back to one of the challenges and why I think university degrees are falling out of favor. And we also did see that almost across every geographic region across the country this year is there is no universal agreement for how you get into cyber. And if you look at some of the skills gaps that we've reported on in the past and the carry over into this year, it's what we're seeing is, in the past, we said, hey, there's a lot of people who don't believe cybersecurity is an entry-level career, and you need to come up through the proverbial ranks of an IT person, service desk, do some sysadmin work or whatnot. Again, that's why I talk about the buckets and why I think that looking at it, shaping it a little differently, and coming to a point where, listen, let's come up with a 70% solution, ideally, for each of those buckets. What are the competencies within that there? And then the other 30% is got to be just-in-time training or on the individual. Hey, listen, this is where I'm at. I know where I want to go. And if you have that commonality for each of those buckets, and then within those 4 buckets, there's going to be commonality that traverses all 4 of them. And I would actually say, since I wrote that article, I have actually since I think appended my view to their support roles. And you look at, because legal, insurance, product managers, communications, marketing people, everybody has to understand some subset of this now. That's where we need to really be position ourselves. And it's a problem larger than IT or cyber or just cybersecurity. But unfortunately, we're the ones that are paying the price right now. So we're kind of being left to our own demise to try to solve it for ourselves, even though these are more systemic issues.
Yeah, and that comment too about you having university degrees versus cybersecurity skill set, right? So not everybody who has the cybersecurity skill sets or have the knowledge on cybersecurity have the ability to go to college, have the ability to get a university degree, but they can demonstrate to employers their knowledge and abilities through certifications, right? And they say, hey, I may not have gone to college for whatever reason, but I have these skill sets, and here's a certificate to prove it, right? So before we go, I want to give you the opportunity to talk a little bit about what ISACA is doing to help individuals retain the skills they need to acquire jobs. Those with skill sets that they can demonstrate their acumen and that they have, and also to help businesses to have well-trained employees. So can you talk a little bit about the value of these certifications, both from someone who's hunting for jobs and somebody who's as an employer trying to evaluate whether they have the right cyber talent.
Sure thing. So I really think so. There's three main approaches that ISACA is currently kind of serving right now. We've got what you call the business consumer model, right? So for the individual, friend of a friend, word of mouth, you hear about a certification or it's listed on a job description, and you're self-motivated to kind of go pursue that. And we've got a ton of resources there. We've got an actual a very quickly maturing workforce development and outreach group right now that are working a lot with workforce empowerment agencies. They're working with universities. I was actually did a presentation to down at Puerto Rico Science and Technology Foundation. Absolutely phenomenal work. Some of the things that some people are looking at. And then we've got the nonprofit side with what we're trying to do with One in Tech Foundation, and which is, largely diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives. And I think one of the things is, and again, we need to look broader at that is, I think with across the US, when we see the acronym DEI or people are talking about, equity and inclusion and, or adding diversity to the workforce, sometimes our thinking is a little narrow on that, and we have to look at all the different walks of life and communities just within the US. So rural is a big one. I lived in a rural community, for 5 years up until this past year. I'll tell you, the digital divide is real and it's impacting the world at large. So anything we can do there. So we're just one vehicle. One of the things that when I did my workforce education and development master's was I became, and I kind of geek out on this. Boy, there's a lot of money that flows into each state for upskilling and reskilling. The problem is we don't make it available to people. We don't tell them how to get access to it. And that's what, first and foremost, Scott, that's what we owe to folks. To your point, not everybody can go to college. And I would argue that the return on investment's not there right now, especially if you're not getting what you need to change, because we have a shell game of skills that's happening right now. Today, what you need in any of these occupations is going to differ tomorrow. So adaptability, first and foremost, is probably the strongest thing that we could be pushing.
Yeah, so that's really, really interesting there, right? So it goes back to some of the soft skill sets, right? The ability to think critically, the ability to problem solve, and you can apply those skill sets to multiple challenges, right? So both in technology, business, life. So Jon, this has been great. I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today and to write the blog. For those who are interested in reading the blog, IT-ISAC.org, search on our blogs section, and it'll be the first one up there. So Jon, I really thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for the work that you do.
Scott, thanks for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. It's going to take a village, so I appreciate entities and passionate people such as yourself and what we continue to do to try to make the world a little bit better.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing your part there. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of FireWall Chats. To listen to more episodes, visit our website, www.it-isac.org.